Welcome to the, oh, so sorry. Welcome to the October 5th, 2022 meeting of the Finance Committee for McLean County. We have 6 members, we have 5 members present, and member Erickson is on his way, but we have 5 members present, which is a quorum, and we will continue to do business. We have approval of meeting minutes for September 7th of 2022. May I have a motion to approve those? I have a motion from Member Friedrich and a second by Member Lawler, excuse me, Lawler. Any questions or additions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those meeting minutes, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Very good. The motion passes. Member Friedrich.
Thank you, Chairman Metzger. I just wanted to apologize. I won't be able to be here for the full entire meeting. I don't know if that's 3 minutes or 3 hours, but I do apologize. I know it's very important and it's kind of rude to walk out, but just letting you know. Thank you for your understanding.
When Member Erickson comes, we should be fine. We've got a quorum, so we're good. So thank you for letting us know that. I am going to move up something in the agenda because I do anticipate this meeting taking quite a while. As those of you who were on the committee last year know, that it did extend well into the evening. So I would like to move the recommended payment of bills and transfers up. Is there any concern of going ahead and paying those bills now? All right. So I need a motion to pay the bills, and we do have a note from our auditor that the bills have been certified and are compliant to the McLean County Board adopted ordinances, resolutions, and policies, and the total for the funds that we are responsible for this committee, it will total $934,995.26. May I have a motion to pay those bills? We have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Lehman. Any questions? All in favor of paying the bills, say aye. Opposed? No opposition. Very good. Thank you. Bills are paid. We're going to move on to number 3, which are appearances by members of the public or county employees. And I believe we have several, and I'm going to turn that over to our County Administrator, Cassie Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Metzger. We do have 3 individuals who have asked to speak tonight. The first is Mr. Don Meyer. If he would like to come up to our podium up here at the front of the room, I guess. And there should be a button on the side of the microphone.
It's green now. Is that good? Okay.
Should be good.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm a lifelong county resident and have served Extension for 27 years in the past, 20 of those as the unit leader county director. I am one of many loyal supporters of 4-H and Extension. I want that to be very clear, and that is why I'm here. But I have 5 points I would like to share with you today. Point 1 relates to funding. Extension carried out $2.7 million and has a $1.5 million budget. I'm assuming those numbers are correct, but transparency of these public funds is lacking. U of I officials, despite local taxpayers that are furnishing most of the funding. Besides that, I'm confused. Last month, U of I officials told you at your county board meeting of the need for a 12 to 15 month carryover, while local staff has been adamant saying 18 months carryover funds are needed. What is the truth? The fact that U of I even dictates what the carryover should be is intriguing, since over 90% of the local unit funds are not provided from U of I campus resources. To be clear, unit funds come from local sources, as in the county levy, matched by state of Illinois funds, not university dollars. One excuse for carryover is the annual staff contracts. I understand that. 1/3 of the staff's salaries are annual contracts, but 2/3 of the staff are civil service and not annually contracted. State match does vary year to year. I've experienced that when I was county director, and some carryover is reasonable, but not an 18-month supply. In recent years, with limited or no state match at all, whose funds were steady and sure? It was our county tax dollars. The 2001 extension levy that was passed is not an entitlement of funds, rather simply a fund source, with annual levies approved by county board and based on need. There is clearly no need this year. Stockpiling of tax dollars is not good policy. Point 2, what has happened to cooperative extension? You heard that word mentioned last month at your county board meeting. The cooperative partnership from Extension's history has vanished. Formerly a combination of bottom-up council needs and ideas were blended with campus initiatives. Now it is a top-down organization, yet local taxes foot the bill. Only 4 council meetings to cover all 3 counties were annually scheduled, and only 11 council votes were taken during that past year. Of those 11, 3 of the motions were to approve the minutes. 4 were to appoint members and committees, 1 modified an agenda, and 3 were to adjourn the meetings. How many votes were related to program direction, staffing issues, or expenditures? None. On September 13th, 2022, the first council meeting since March of 2022 was held, but only 5 members from the 3 counties were present. No business was able to be conducted, and the county director was absent as well. Point 3, respect for volunteers. An underlying issue with extension includes the handling of staff and volunteers. Countless volunteers have left the program. A few were fired and others dismissed when opposing viewpoints were shared. Emails from local staff have labeled volunteers as bullies. During your March County Board meeting extension presentation, until questions were asked, there was not one mention of the Extension Council, empowered to lead the program, nor one reference to the hundreds of 4-H volunteers who give thousands of hours leading clubs and conducting the county fair. A high number of staff have come and gone, especially impacting 4-H. 67-page policy manuals have been imposed on master gardeners and master naturalists, replacing long-standing, locally developed guidelines. Committees have been eliminated and board members stripped of responsibilities. This year, the local 4-H alumni group was no longer recognized. That group was formed and the council endorsed it in the late 1990s. And despite more than 20 years of supporting and funding 4-H, the group was suddenly banned from using the 4-H clover and the 4-H rooms at the county fair. Many volunteers are reluctant to speak out or attend meetings like this to share their concerns and support the levy reduction this year, as threats have already been made regarding cuts to programs if local funding is cut. But the carryover in hand should not cause any cuts. Point 4, the U of I indifference to local concerns. Numerous local groups have traveled to the university campus to share concerns with U of I administration. My group met with the U of I College of ACES dean and top extension administrators in February of 2020, and we shared these same concerns of fiscal policy, heavy-handed leadership, top-down programming, and staff turnover, yet those issues remain. My final point,
I'm so sorry.
All right, no problem. I was ready to wrap up. Thank you for the opportunity. It's not a political party issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandra McGee. And I believe the microphone is still on, Sandra, so whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy McGee, a supporter of McLean County Extension programming for 47 years. First, as a member and volunteer of Homemakers Extension Association, HEA, and then as an extension employee for 19 years, the last 5 which were as McLean County 4-H youth educator. I retired in 2011, and as a side note, back in the day, as teenagers, I and my future husband were part of Woodford County 4-H. Later, our 4 children were involved in McLean County 4-H. I do not fear for the financial stability of the McLean County Extension, nor do I fear for the existing 4-H program. I feel assured that funds for the 4-H program will be available because our county extension office reports $2.7 million in hand. I applaud the decision that a 4-H member dues will be waived this year, and I consider this another sign of financial strength. The 4-H program in McLean County will not be harmed this year by a reduction in county board funding. I am greatly concerned, though, that vanishing and wasting resources exist within our county extension program regarding volunteers. Extension was and remains a simple concept. Each one reach one, each one teach one. County Extension has always celebrated our volunteers. Programming is designed for grassroots volunteers to disseminate the university's research-based information and bring it back to us for common day problems. These volunteers bring their own particular ideas, their expertise, and they bring their audiences that they're connected with, and they further build the audiences for extension. Then they also pay local property taxes. The same local volunteers pay to support local office space from which UI campus faculty can provide those research-based content programs. You know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, please picture this. The extension programming is like a big orange bus. And on that bus, the wheels of the bus are the volunteers, the extension volunteers. Volunteers throughout McLean County are withdrawing their support, citing adverse management decisions and a lack of transparency. Trust in county extension management has eroded due to lack of information and an abundance of misinformation. Volunteers staff many extension programs, including the robust efforts of the Master Gardeners, the Master Naturalists, and of course the 4-H Youth Program. An extension volunteer is screened and background checked just as the teachers are in our public schools, and yet volunteers receive discouraging and disparaging emails, and in some instances, dismissal by the extension office. For example, according to the statistics that the extension sourced, that our extension sourced, 4 years ago, 4-H volunteers numbered 376, and in 21-22, there are 116 4-H volunteers. The monetary value of a volunteer to the bottom line of a nonprofit is calculated yearly by the respected website independentsector.org. This year, that dollar amount is $29.95 an hour. If an extension volunteer, a 4-H volunteer, invests just 5 hours a month for 12 months, they've donated a total of $1,797. The involvement of this year's 116 volunteers in dollars and cents has supported extension programming with over $208,000. Truthfully, many of our extension 4-H program volunteers work many more than 5 hours. But I'll tell you, what they bring to a child's learning experience is priceless. Some had voiced the concern that 4-H is going to be cut and that extension programming is going to be cut. With $2.7 million in hand, it's obvious that funding is not an issue. What is an issue is there are no more wheels on the bus. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Carolyn Hansen.
By the way, today is Don Meyer's birthday. Just thought I'd share that. That doesn't count on my 5 minutes. Happy birthday, Don. Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to share comments. I have been involved in 4-H for 66 years. No matter where I've lived, from my home state of Ohio to Washington, Texas, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, 4-H has been part of my life. I was a 9-year member, a volunteer in Ohio and Illinois for 15 years, a 4-H mom, and for the last 5 years of my career, I was the 4-H educator here in McLean County. As a professional and 4-H alum, I have benefited from the best youth development and career development organization in the world. As such, I feel compelled to share my concerns about the status of extension in McLean County. Realizing the county board's role is to provide funding and not necessarily oversee the programs of the local unit of extension, it is a responsibility of the county board to spend tax dollars wisely. In that fiduciary role, you must be aware of the pulse of the program and to hear from the public about the programs funded by your levies, matched with Illinois dollars. I join others with you today with the concerns that with a reserve of $2.7 million, that is reason enough to hold the line on the 2023 levy. Last year, the 4-H membership fee was waived for all 3 counties in the unit, and that's great. That $20 for 4-Hers really helped the families. But the challenge is that now our 4-Hers must pay for their project books. Many of our 4-Hers take between 3 and 20 projects a year. Now, some of the project books are online, others might be $5, but there are some, the series are $65. So now we're talking anywhere from $5 to over $50 per child. I believe that one way to invest in our 4-H program is to use some of those $2.7 million to purchase or at least reduce fees for those project books. I'd like to talk about the 4-H member to staffing ratio. You've already heard the numbers about volunteers, but our number in 2019, there were 929 4-H members. That number dropped to 770 this year. From 2019 to 2022, the fair exhibitor numbers dropped from 676 to 555, or a 21% loss. Yet even with substantial drop in membership, staff numbers have remained the same. Adding to the problem, there was and still is a high rate of turnover of staff. We cannot put all of this at the feet of COVID. To me, the ratio of staff to 4-H members is fiscally questionable. My third area of fiscal concern is the loss of volunteers in 4-H, and you've heard a lot about that already. So I won't belabor the point, except that I've done the math on those 70% that have left the volunteer force. If they've given 10% or 10 hours a month at $30, we have lost almost $1 million worth of volunteer support. That to me is baffling. So my question is, why? Why is this happening? I don't know pretend to know the reason why, but I will tell you it has become a fiscal problem because now staff members have to pick up the slack of not having the volunteers to help them implement their programs. And finally, in July, the group formerly known as the Timeless Clovers 4-H alumni was informed it can no longer use the 4-H emblem or name. Why? Well, a memorandum of understanding was forced upon them without negotiation, and the membership resisted. For over 20 years, Timeless Clovers has spent thousands of dollars to benefit 4-H, and county extension leadership demanded to be named to the executive board, among other changes. The group was then denied access to set up a display, and you've heard all about that already. So, why is this a fiscal issue? The group has supplemented 4-H with thousands of non-tax dollars. So I ask you to consider how tax dollars are being spent on a program with non-transparency or questionable facts and data, and where citizens of McLean County who volunteer are unappreciated and poorly treated. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers tonight. That was our last request.
Very good. That moves us on to departmental matters, and we're going to start. I did move this action item up for A1A, and thank you, Mr. Erickson. We know that you have arrived, or you've been here for a while, so thank you very much. For A1A, and that is request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the Cooperative Extension Fund 0133, Cooperative Extension Department 0088, and Cooperative Extension Program 0088. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? I have a motion by Member Friedrich and a second by Member Erickson. Do we have any comments, any discussion? Looks like we have Member Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you to everyone who spoke tonight. It's great to be able to get some of the background of why this is such one of the passionate issues. One thing that I just wanted to share my concern with is in a year and in a time where we're really focusing on education, it socks me in the gut to think that we as a body and we as a board might be making such a large financial cut to an organization that primarily exists for youth education, for youth outreach, for opportunities to supplement and to help our community be able to grow. I mean, we got to hear about the impact to so many people for programs like 4-H, for programs like the Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, the different programs that actually go into our school systems to be able to help give a quality and extraordinary education. I certainly understand the financial concerns and the financial implications, but in looking at what the U of I extension has come against, it seems like with the process of having that 12 to 15 months in reserve might actually have helped it through two really large financial crises. I mean, it helped through the state budget situation to where they weren't getting any money from the state. Having that type of reserve was of assistance for them. And also through the challenges experienced with COVID, they were able to stay afloat. Certainly, if there are concerns that exist with how the program is operated and like that, I mean, as a fiscal body, we're here to focus on budget, as many folks have pointed out, and I think we should probably punt some of those pieces and hold the folks accountable and share the feedback that we've received with the folks at the extension, but really focus on the financial piece. In 2018, the budget that we allotted as a county board was $503,000. In 2019, it was $503,000. Then we took and we cut that down to $375,000 in 2020, and cut it down even further to $300,000 in 2021. This $30,000, the extension leadership has said that they are anticipating it absolutely impacting and causing cuts to the programs. So that's not harming or holding accountable just the adults that are running the programs. That's hurting the kids that are part of our community who aren't going to get to have the 4-H projects, who aren't going to get to have the experience in their classrooms and like that. So I would, at this juncture, be it appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that maybe we can meet in the middle, maybe we can compromise, recognizing and understanding that a message has been sent with the $30,000 budget, but can we maybe meet in the middle to make sure that programs like 4-H aren't going to be drastically cut in the next fiscal year that starts summer 2023, to make sure that they're taken care of? Can we perhaps, somehow come together and do a little compromising to make sure that, yes, there is a message that is sent and we're holding folks accountable, but we're not going to make our youth and our people who use 4-H in our community be the ones to suffer from it. May I please make a motion to amend the amount for the tax levy to $200,000 in place of the initially put out $30,000.
I'm so sorry. I did not have my microphone on. We have a motion by Member Lehman for $200,000 change from $30,000, second by Member Lawler. And we have Member, or Vice Chair Thompson would like to have the floor.
So first of all, we have made comments and they have fallen on deaf ears multiple times over multiple years, and that's very frustrating. Number two, they have $2.7 million. Even after the cut, they have way over 150% of a budget in reserve for next year. So for them to think, or for you to make the case that they're going to cut programmings and kids are going to be harmed, it just does not make sense. We as county board members have a fiscal responsibility to watch the taxpayers' dollars. We as a county operate on like a, I'm looking at Cassie, like a 30% reserve, is that correct? 30 to 40% given, I'm estimating here.
Our
and
reserve
not to
is
put
how
you on
much
the
for the
spot,
county?
but
Our general fund reserve is 12.6.
Oh, 12.6%, excuse me, I'm way over exaggerating. And I'm getting a nod from the auditor in the back. So we operate on 12.6% and they want 150%. I'm sorry, I'm not going for that. As a representative of the taxpayer, that's unacceptable to me. And we are not in any way, shape or form hurting the programming by making this cut. They still have adequate funding for the next year to the tune of 150% of their budget after this takes place. So for us to give them an additional $200,000 just to put in the bank so they can have, I find that irresponsible as a representative of the taxpayer.
Member Erickson.
Thank you. I would concur with Member Thompson. I would only say, and I will direct this to the press, if it should be reported that programs are being cut, that article should be fact-checked because it's not factual. And to report it in an unfactual way is being disingenuous in your reporting. And to say it any other way is to say it as clearly as I just said it. Nothing is going to be cut. When you're sitting on a $2.7 million reserve, it's hard for me to figure out where you're going to find why you would need to cut anything. So, you want to report it as programs are being cut, you report it as programs being cut, but you're not being factual and you're not being truthful.
Member Friedrich.
We're talking about budget here and money. What I've been hearing is none of that. What I've heard was the struggles with the volunteers, the people behind us, getting cast aside, their concerns falling on deaf ears, and nothing's being done about it. My concern is that it's not a money concern. I have a lot of friends out in 4-H. There's a few of them behind me, and their heart's broken the way leadership has directed their agenda, and it's not based here in McLean County where it originally started. I mean, meaning it's getting directed from Champaign and their ideology, and it's not being accepted well here in McLean County and in other counties. So that's why I'm opposed to fund their budget.
I would like to make a couple of comments. For those who are unaware, there is an extension board. That board consists of 3 members that are appointed by the Extension Service and 3 that are appointed from the county board chair. Jim Solner and member Solner and Gerald Thompson and I are on that board, along with 3 members from the Extension Board. We met and had a long discussion about this, and it was voted on by that board for a $30,000 levy. It was not voted to give any more. During that conversation, I looked over I was sitting right there, and Ms. McCoy and Ms. Sibley were here. And I said, if this levy goes through at 30,000 with $2.7 million, there should not be a reduction in any programs. And if there is, then it's out of spite. Ms. McCoy looked at me and she said, oh, there will not be. So I believe that what she said is accurate, and I am not going to vote for an additional $270,000, or excuse me, $170,000 more. So, but if you'd like another comment, you're welcome to. Oh, I am so sorry. Mr. Lawyer first, and then Ms. Lehman.
So as the new guy on this board, I'm trying to take all this in and learn all of this. Thank you. You just answered my first question. Was I wanted to know who was on that board from this board, which answered my first question. I'm not gonna go into the champagne ideology coming to McLean County stuff. I'm not going into all of that, but I'm just trying to write down thoughts because I'm coming at this from an educator myself. So as an educator, we've seen funding always being cut or threatened to be cut, and educators have been attacked and all this stuff for the ideology, all of that stuff. I've seen an email about a consumer economics teacher being placed on hold for a rehire. I teach that every day. I've seen horticulture program as well. So again, you just spoke to that, which helps clarify things. As a consumer ed teacher, I teach that it's good practice to have a reserve fund for a budget, to have an emergency fund, to have reserve funds to cover emergencies, especially based on the last couple of years with all the craziness that has been going on. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I'm trying to look at this issue from the educator's perspective who deals with kids every day, and just take all sides in. So I'm trying to learn from every one of you in here, and I really appreciate all the different perspectives I'm getting.
Member Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. So I certainly don't want my suggestion of perhaps meeting in the middle with a different amount to be seen as a spite to the volunteers. As somebody who has been an active volunteer and who's been a part of organizations that rely on volunteers, anytime someone is in a position to feel like they are made less than is completely inappropriate. However, that is one thing that I'd like to, again, reframe our focus to those comments and those direct concerns are a part of the organization. So anyone with concerns on those things, it should be directed back to the extension itself, not used as a lever or used as a vice for considering the budgetary things that we're here to talk about and pass today. When I look at the amount coming from 5 years ago, $500,000, and going down to $30,000, there is such a chasm between those two. Certainly, with money in reserve, that is incredibly, it's a large amount, but they have been through many situations that have warranted reserve. I'm sure there are many other organizations in our community that operate on a fairly sizable reserve. So I guess what I'm trying to say is $30,000 really seems, it seems like an inappropriate gap from where we were last year, from where we were 5 years ago. And I would like to stick by the volunteers and thank them with their assistance along the way. And hopefully, as McLean County continues to support the organization with our participation, with our volunteers, and with our funds, that we can make it be a place that everybody feels welcome again, so that we can be back here next year celebrating all of the great 4-H projects that we saw a month or so ago. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everybody for sharing your concerns along the way.
I believe Member Thompson would like another comment.
Just briefly, I think it's important to note that the vote on that we took was 5 for and 1 abstention. So no one on the council voted against the 30,000. So I think that's number one. I lost my train on the last. I think it was. I just want. I don't know where that one was going, but I wanted to make that point.
I do want to clarify something also. Since I have been on that board, we have asked every year to spend down, and every year we have seen an increase. We started at 1.3 million as a reserve. We now have 2.7 million. So that would tell me that that this had fallen on deaf ears for many years, for at least 4 years, asking them to spend down, and it didn't happen. In fact, it increased. So for us to continue to give them any amount seems irresponsible, in my opinion. Any other comments? His brain freeze has stopped, and so he would like to make one more comment, and then we're going to call the question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we've had conversations with Livingston and Woodford as well, and they share the same concerns as we and have similar thoughts. And it's not just our county that has concerns, it's all of us have concerns. And so where they end up and their funding, I don't know. But I do know that they were at our April board meeting. Actually, they were at the last 2 board meetings. Woodford County was, and they had very similar concerns as we. And so I just think that's important to note as well. It's not just us, and I say us, McLean County, but so.
Call the question. So all in favor of the amended motion, say aye. Roll call. Roll call vote.
Excuse me, I think you should ask first for, did you get a second on it?
Yes.
It's just a vote on whether or not it can be amended, not on the amended motion.
Oh.
On the motion to amend.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate that parliamentary procedure. So we are voting on whether to amend that motion. So a yes would say yes, amend it to 200,000, then we'd have to vote again. No would be not to amend, not to accept that amendment. All right? Roll call vote. And chair will vote.
Roll call vote, as Ms. Metzger pointed out, it's the motion to amend to change the budget to 200,000. Member Lawler,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes?
Member Friedrich,
No.
Member Erickson,
No.
Member Thompson,
No.
Chairman Metzger.
No.
The motion fails.
The motion fails. So there we are now going to go back then to the original motion of $30,000 for the extension budget for 2023. Do we want roll call vote again? Yes. Roll call vote again, please.
Roll call vote on the original motion, the extension budget. Member Lawler,
No.
Member Lehman,
No?
Member Friedrich,
Yes.
Member Erickson,
Yes.
Member Thompson,
Yes.
Chairman Metzger.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Motion passes. So the recommended levy for extension for 2023 is $30,000. Moving on to 4A1, 4A2A, and that is a presentation by Evergreen Solutions, which is our contractor that we had for our salary survey. And I'm going to let Ms. Taylor take that.
Thank you, Chair Metzger. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you all Rob Williamson. He is with Evergreen Solutions LLC. They are the firm that was contracted to complete our compensation and classification study for the county. And Mr. Williamson has a presentation for us this evening that I think you will all find very interesting. So thank you, Rob. You can take it away.
Thank you. It's good to be with you again. So usually my wife tells me I don't need a microphone, so this is it's going to be wild. Can you hear me okay? Oh, it's for recording. All right, cool. So there you go. It still applies. So we were here in May, and I just want to say that get the opportunity to do this all over the country, right? So not every client is the same, and it is pretty clear to see that you have a good team here. You have a really good family here, and it shows. And so it was really neat to be a part of this project for a lot of different reasons, but it's neat and very rewarding to be part of projects like this one when you know it could have a significant impact. And I hope that that's what you see and what you take away from this. As somebody who had an opportunity to serve as an elected official, as a county commissioner myself in a Florida county, I know that by the time the decisions get to you, all the easy choices are gone. We probably saw that just a few moments ago with the vote that was taken, but I just want to tell you on a personal level, I have the deepest appreciation for what you do and the time that you spend doing it. And thank you for hiring us to perform this study. So we'll go ahead and get started. The overview of what we're going to cover with you for the next 15 or 20 minutes, and yes, there'll be plenty of time for a Q&A, and stop me at any time if you need to as we go along the way. We're going to talk a little bit about the study goals, the phases of the project, the employee outreach that I mentioned a little while ago, what we found kind of in that current system findings when we got on site initially and started reviewing the data, the market results, ultimately the recommendations when we get to those implementation options and the associated costs, and then whatever the next steps would be. So really what we were trying to do is get to what we call internal and external equity, which is a fancy way of saying we want to give you a proposed pay plan that's fair and competitive. The internal equity piece is we're trying to make sure that those classification titles, those job titles, and the families that they're in, those classification families that they're in, are internally equitable, that they're fair, that they make sense, that there's a progression between each one of those pay grades as we move through your pay plan. Then we have to compare you to somebody. And so we had 20 market target peers that we compared you to. We'll go over the list of those here in a little bit. And that's where we want to make sure that those classifications, those job titles that you have here, McLean, that they are competitive with market. And in a hyper-competitive labor market that we have now, a historic one, quite frankly, it's moving rapidly, as I'm sure all of you are well aware. So these are the phases that we went through. We had a kickoff call way back in April 27th. And as I was mentioning, we had outreach, in-person outreach here. As we went through the collecting the data phase, assessment of current conditions, basically the first, I would say 30% of the project is just collecting the data. And then after we collect that data, then we have to analyze that data, and then we compile it to where basically we can present it to you in a manner that you could create a strategy out of it. Because otherwise it's just numbers on a page until you as elected policymakers and your team decide to turn it into a strategy. So those employee meetings that I was mentioning, we had 2 days of meetings. We had 4 orientation sessions. We had 20 focus groups, and you should be very proud of the participation that you had with your team. I heard from a diverse cross-section of employees across the county, and right at 72% of all your classification titles participated in our job assessment tool survey. That's the survey instrument that we use. So if someone couldn't attend an orientation, if they couldn't attend a focus group, they still had an opportunity to be heard through that survey. They had an opportunity to tell us in their own words what it is that they do here in service to McLean. All right? The other part that was really significant, I thought, is that you had over 71% of your supervisors participate in that survey as well. So Some of the positive comments we received, nope, not passing any judgment here, just kind of giving you an idea of what some of the highlights were. The benefits, a lot of folks came to work here, not too surprisingly, initially because of the benefits, and a lot of them have stayed here because of the benefits. There were a couple of comments that maybe the gap is being closed a little bit with the competition on benefits, but by and large, that was viewed as a positive. The culture, every single focus group, because I was here conducting them, I can tell you that we had employees talk about the fact that they like the folks that they work with. And that goes back to that family piece that I was talking about earlier. The proximity and community impact, obviously the location, people living close to where they work was an attractant, but also the fact that they felt like they were doing something good for their community, that they were being of impact there. Some of the concerns we had, not too surprisingly, it's like the Family Feud question, give me the top 3 issues that you face. The number 1 answer was pay, right? Folks wanted to tell us that they felt as though when you're comparing what they make to the surrounding market or in the areas that they work in particularly, even if it was outside of the market, they felt like that they were behind here as it relates to pay, and that was impacting their ability to recruit and retain quality employees, and that was manifesting itself with increased turnover. Internal equity piece would be that wage compression issue, where let's say I've been working here for 5 or 6 years, and I'm making $17 an hour, and I started at 15, so I've had a pretty good, progression between 15 and 17, but now there's an open position that's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, and to fill that open position in this market, you had to hire somebody at $17 an hour. That creates wage compression, where we have somebody that's been here 5 or 6 years making the same amount as somebody that just walked in the door. And that can happen. Well, I can tell you it is happening all over the United States, so I don't want you to think that that's unique to McLean. It's happening all across the United States, but it was something that was identified here. And then something I thought was unique that we don't hear a lot, we had some folks mentioning that the paying for parking was an issue for them, especially if folks working after hours didn't have to pay for parking, or folks that may be working in different departments or different areas of the county, that wasn't something that applied to them. So that came up quite a bit as well. Some of the strengths that you have, and when we evaluated and performed our assessment of current conditions, that you had, because of probably a lot of different factors, but not the least of which is you haven't had a compensation study since going back to 1999. So things can kind of grow, and maybe you move away from a standard pay plan or pay practice. We have a bunch of classifications. Now, the great part about that is that they all had a range spread, a minimum and a maximum, and that allowed for the opportunity for employees to progress in their pay grade. But we have close to 100 different classifications / pay grades, which is a little much. That will end up helping you, though, as we implement the new pay plan, because having those areas of specialization, those will allow you to develop stronger jobs, more detailed jobs, well-defined jobs as we build out the pay plan. We also noticed that with so many tenured employees, it's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for you with implementing succession planning and to leverage that institutional knowledge that you have here. And in a market where we're seeing the average millennial switch jobs every 2.8 years, Gen Zers 2.3 years, to have tenured employees is definitely something that you can leverage to your benefit. Weaknesses, a couple of things that we noticed was the minimum salary for those pay grades that you have. You had 70%, more than 70% of folks at the minimum of their pay grade, which means you have a lot of folks clustered at that introductory pay position. The other part that is definitely going to need to be corrected to stay competitive is that wage compression piece that I mentioned, where you have 85% more of employees that are within their supervisor salary grade, or within 15% of their salary grade. So now on to the target markets. We did a market salary survey for you. And we had basically 2 main pieces. Back up for a second for the methodology of the study. You have that job assessment tool survey that we have for every single employee. That takes care of the internal equity piece, but then we have to compare you to somebody. That's the market salary survey piece. We received responses from 11 peers. Those are listed there for you. And we did adjust for cost of living for each of the job or each of the responses that we received, so we can kind of get an apples to apples comparison across municipalities. And we ended up with right at 6 matches for each of the classification titles that we had the responses for. I know this is a lot, quite frankly, that this is just a lot for a presentation. There will be a brief test later that will affect your reelection, but you shouldn't be concerned about that. We'll just, so you are safe. Yes, you are safe then. So these are the classification titles. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we have here. You know, we had the classification titles. There's those minimums and maximums that I was talking about. So when you hear me talk about range spread, that's this here, okay? That's basically the range between your minimum and your maximum. And then this was the number of responses, the number of peers that we heard from on that specific classification. And keep in mind that the salary survey that we did, we're not analyzing individual employees. We're looking at individual classifications, right? I know that Chair Metzger has some experience with that, so you're kind of speaking my language a little bit here, hopefully. So this is just additional classifications. All this information will be shared, obviously, with staff when we get to the final report. But this just, and I'll share the PowerPoint presentation as well. If you want to dig into this a little bit deeper, you can. But this kind of gives you an idea, your starting salaries, where you would perform on some of these classifications. And then the midpoint is probably the one that we want to focus more in on, because that takes into account some tenure. You know, typically people are going to have a little bit of experience in that midpoint because they've reached some progression in their career in their respective pay grade. So we'll just keep moving on. All right. So market results, obviously, if you had a negative there, that indicates that you're behind market on that specific position. What we noticed for the towns of the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington, that, you know, those are, we were told, were key markets. Not so much that you wanted to compete dollar for dollar, but that they are a competitor. So it is important to not just compare those two, which we didn't. You know, we had 11 of the 20 peers that we received adequate response for, and they were 2 of those market peers. But for those 2 specifically, I did want to highlight that it'd be very difficult for you to compete with them given the distance that you are behind the market at basically 22% and 11% respectively. The county was pretty much behind market overall in virtually every classification where we received 5 responses. And some of the specific ones that were more than 25% behind market are listed at the bottom. And it is a diverse cross-section. It wasn't centered around one classification family. This is just a little bit of a deeper dive on the Bloomington Normal area. You can tell this is how you would relate specifically just to these 2 municipalities and some of these respective classification titles. And of course, that's important because if I'm living here and I want to work there, or I'm making that choice on where I want to work, it's pretty tough to be competitive with that. So key recommendations, we have a simpler pay plan. That's the first thing that I would say. It was one of the things that staff was requesting from the get-go, is that they wanted something that would be easy to understand, that would take the structure that they have that had been created and evolved, if you will, over a course of decades into something that would be simpler and easier to understand. So we have a proposed pay plan for the representatives to consider. I know that today is not an action item board meeting, but as I'm sure that the rest of the members of the board will be listening to your recommendations strongly, we would put forward a proposed pay plan that has 21 pay grades. And that those range spreads that I was talking about before, the distance between the minimum and the maximum, the starting salary, and at the 30-year mark, what your maximum salary would be if you stayed in that same job title for 30 years, that the distance between that minimum and maximum would be at 55%. And we'd have a 7% midpoint progression. So between each grade, it would go up 7%. We then reassigned the classification titles. We assigned them a pay grade, and we based that off of the internal equity evaluation and the market position to make sure that here again, we're providing you a pay plan that's got internal and external equity, that it's fair and competitive. Yes, we are building a pay plan that's based on individual classifications, but employees will be impacted. And some employees will see larger adjustments than others, but that is not because of performance, that is not because of personalities, that is because of the data. That is because of the market response or the market positioning. And then we place those employees within their new recommended pay grade, and then we have an implementation option for you to consider. The new proposed pay plan, I didn't put the current pay plan up because it would have taken 3 slides. All right, so we had a lot going on there. So the new pay plan would have, starting at a $15 an hour, and if you take $15 and you multiply that times 2,080 hours, you end up with a $31,200 salary. That would be your new starting salary, and then we slot classifications into each respective pay grade, okay? And this is your new, and here's what I was talking about with the range spread, 55%, so 31,200, you go up 55% from there, you get to your 48,360. So let's say I was in a custodial position, for example, or if I was in an introductory position here with the county and I was just starting here, that would be my starting salary in that 102 grade, and I would have an opportunity to progress throughout my career to that 48. As you move maybe into a supervisory role, or you move into a role that would move you into the next pay grade up, you have a 7% progression between the 2 pay grades. This is what we call the money slide. This is probably what you're most interested in, and this is where I want to pause a beat and say what a phenomenal job that Cassie has done and the team that they have done. We had numerous iterations of what we call our solution file, where we would provide her information like, we think this is the answer and we think this is the final solution, and it would be back to the drawing board, and we would continue to meet and we would continue to hone this and get this down to where a lot of great questions and a lot of great conversations, and we feel like this is a recommendation that does a lot. If you remember back to one of my earlier slides, I was talking about how you have a lot of tenured employees here. You have employees that have invested their lives, many of them, in service to the county. And we feel like this implementation option best gives an opportunity to reward those employees, but also reward those employees who have been high performers, those that have progressed up, those who have been promoted, whether they've been here 3 years or whether they've been here 30 years. So this is what we call the hybrid parity model. And what that does, a hybrid parity model, is it gives full credit, 100% credit for an employee for the amount of time that they've spent in their current class title, in their current role. So if I've been in my current role for 4 years, I'm going to get total credit for that 4 years. But then it also gives 50% credit, if you will, for any remaining time that they've worked here, regardless of what class title they've been in. So if they've held 5 different jobs over the course of 10 years, or if they've held 2 jobs over the course of 10 years, they're going to get 100% credit for that 4 years in their current job, and then they're going to get 50% credit for the remaining 6 years, so they'd get an additional 3 for a total of 7. Now, why is that number important? Because if we look at a 30-year career, if we go back to the pay plan here, if it's going to take me 30 years to move through, if I didn't move classification titles, if I stayed in a 102 pay grade from day 1 all the way to 30 years, you would think that at the 15-year mark, I'd be right here at the midpoint, right? It's going to take me 30 years to go through, the middle at 15. So in that hybrid parity model, if I get 7 years credit for that hybrid parity, the 4 years in my current class title and the 3 years for the other, combine that for 7 years, I'm going to move forward 7 of the 30 years. So that's where I'm going to be slotted in the new pay plan. And that's how you get to different employees getting different amounts, but it's done fairly and equitably. And it also solves for problems like compression, because now you're going to have that employee that's been here 5, 6 years. They're going to get an increase that will give them some distance between that employee who just got hired here last week. So it solves for compression. The total for hybrid parity is right at about 2.93 million. Now, what we looked at was a 2-year implementation with a $6,000 cap, meaning that no employee would receive more than a $6,000 increase in any year. I'm sure if you wanted to implement the entire thing, that wouldn't upset any of your employees, but I've been told that we can't afford that, so that's why we're doing the cap. So there's also a increase that employees would receive on their merit date as well. That allows for every employee to receive a little bit of an increase from where they are now. Next steps, we're going to be working on updating your job descriptions, or in many instances, writing new legally compliant job descriptions for the classification titles that we've recommended, the changes that we have for those classification titles, and the hierarchy of family, the classification families that they would end up in. We want to make sure that we get that completed, as well as we'll be submitting a final report that memorializes everything that we've done for you going back to April to this conversation, to where you'll have the report for all the market salary survey results, as well as the outreach and benefits and the whole thing. And then after that, we will provide training for ongoing maintenance for a year of the pay plan, because obviously this is a living, breathing, dynamic document, and it's going to be a big change from what you're used to now. And so we're going to be there to help guide you throughout that entire process for a year. And that brings me to my favorite part, question and answer. No questions? Great,
No
thank you.
Member Lehman has a question, or at least she may
Yeah.
have multiple questions, so go right ahead.
Thank you. So you mentioned the training on the pay plan maintenance that's going to be ongoing. So is that training just to get us through what you've suggested here and now, or is that training on how to even look forward into the future, like looking how to maintain it for 5 years, for 10 years, et cetera? Or is it just right now?
No, great question, Representative. And it is meant to take the existing pay plan. Once we get it implemented, you're going to hire somebody the next day or the next week. And when you do, it's going to be training to make sure that your team, mainly Amy, knows how to slot that employee appropriately. Or let's say as things change, you may need to create a new position. Things change. I mean, we learned that with technology changing. We learned that with COVID, how things change. And we were hit with all kinds of new job titles and reclassifications. And so if you have a job that gets reclassified, or if you get a new classification title, we're going to show you how to score that position to where it can be properly placed in your pay plan to make sure we maintain internal equity. That's the ongoing maintenance that I'm referring to. Yeah.
Member Erickson?
I have to phrase this question properly for proper reasons. I mean, let's say someone leaves McLean County government and then they want to come back to McLean County government. Okay, I mean, is there a plan that, like, how we're going to deal with that? Are we going to do that on a case-by-case basis? I mean, some people like the grass is greener out there in the private sector, but then all of a sudden, not so green, you know, and then they come back to the public sector. I mean, are we working in that proposal, or how we're going to do that, or trying to figure out how we're going to deal with employees that might start doing that on us?
See, this is a very smart question, because what that scenario that you just brought up is absolutely going to be happening as the economy slows and as the private sector stops throwing money at folks the way they have been over the course of the last several years. And the stability of local government seems a lot better than maybe it did before. And you might have folks that are looking to come back And, we have certain clients that they put in policies in place to handle that kind of as a one-size-fits-all approach. Then we have others, which is what I prefer, where it leaves you a little bit more flexibility and you put it in the hands of your team. You empower them to make those case-by-case decisions. And if that was a former high performer that left for on good standing and you want to bring them back and honor their experience that they had, then you'd have the flexibility to do that, and we can show how you can slot them into the pay plan accordingly and honor that experience. It really is an individual policy decision on how you want to implement that, but you're wise to ask about it because it's coming. Fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, at least, some of the talent that's walked out the door across the country in the public sector is going to start coming back. And that can only be good for your constituents.
Any other questions? I believe Ms. Taylor has a comment to make.
So in reference to the 2-year plan to implement, we of course would love to implement this plan in its totality in 1 year. But due to many of our positions being in our general fund and our general fund being tax capped, we were not able to meet the numbers in those projected salary costs in 1 year. And so we have divided those up with a higher percentage in the first year and the remainder in the second year. So that was the rationale behind that.
And I believe this should not be directed to Mr. Williamson. I want to direct this probably more to Ms. Taylor, and that would be how, once this is completed, I mean, we have a pretty good idea because we're seeing it in the budget numbers. You all looked at your budgets and you'll see that first page talks about here are the job names. This is the current salary. This is the 2023 salary. So we have a pretty good idea, but how is this going to be communicated to the leadership team, leadership team meaning the leaders of each department, some elected officials, some not? How is that going to be communicated to them? And then how is that communication going to be directed to the employees?
Thank you for that question, Chair Metzger. So right now, we are completing meetings, one-on-one meetings with the department heads to review the classification recommendations from Evergreen. We've been conducting half-hour to 1-hour sessions with each department head so that they could look at the classifications that relate to those jobs in their departments and ask questions of us. Amy Baker, the HR manager, and myself have been completing those one-on-ones, if you will. And additionally, after the proposed budget has been finalized and adopted, the HR team will be completing payroll sheets for every single employee and submitting those to their departments and to those individual employees so that they will know where they stand within the market as well as the hybrid parity, and understand how those changes were enacted this year because of the compensation study. Ongoing, we anticipate that we will be reviewing these figures yearly and trying to do maybe not as an intensive of a evaluation as Evergreen Solutions completed for us, because I know Rob and his partner Peter have worked many, many hours on this to put us in a good place for our market today. And so we will be looking at that on a yearly basis with our HR team to evaluate what we would need to bring to the board so that we could stay current.
I'm going to ask Mr. Williamson a question, and then I don't think this will throw you at all, but as employees receive this, then they're going to want to see the data. Help us understand why that data is not available to department heads, specific data for specific jobs, meaning survey data that you receive. Please explain why that cannot be shared.
Well, my answer to that would be that it's your data. You paid for it.
No, I
So-
mean specific data from Bloomington pays this amount, Normal pays this amount, Champaign County
Well, federal guidelines say that we have to have 5 peers for a study, especially for that specific classification title. For example, we have to have responses from at least 5 peers before we can show a defined market position. And the reason for that is so you won't know what any one given peer was. So you couldn't do any type of, correct, and trying to rig the game, if you will. So as far as the overall raw data, the aggregate data, we share the aggregate data with those who participate in the process. As far as the overall market salary survey, that absolutely, you can, we look at that is the defense. The data is the defense for what we put forward. So there is absolutely no concern whatsoever with sharing the aggregate data that we have to be compliant with guidelines, federal guidelines, with anything that we've got. Absolutely, because a transparent process is a defensible process. And something like this, quite frankly, this is transformative for the county. This is an absolute game changer for you in the way, as it relates to employment, as it relates to your ability to compete in the marketplace. So I would think that it would be received very well, but you know, the data that we have, all of the files will be shared with the team, and absolutely, we would encourage you to share it with your department heads and have those conversations and let them dive in there and take a look.
Ms. Michael, because you're a department head, I would allow you to come forward. We will not take requests from the general public with questions for Mr. Williamson, but because she's a department head, I am extending that invitation.
Thanks. Sorry, I thought I could just yell it out to you from there. But, and it'll probably seem like a very dumb question, but I'm no good at math, and my staff knows that. So the question is, when I go back tomorrow, because the staff knows about this meeting, and I have a staff member that says, okay, I'm making $50,000 now. How much am I going to make my next paycheck or when it takes effect? And how much more am I going to make? That's what my staff wants to know.
It's up to you. I'll take it if you want.
We will be sharing that information with individuals in November after the budget is approved. So we're not prepared to share that individual data yet.
So November? And do they make appointments with you to come up?
They will be receiving a payroll change form from our HR staff that will show them exactly what the increase was, what their current rate of pay is, what the increase was, and what the increase was for.
That's perfect. So I'll tell them end of November, probably, something like that? Okay.
And it will take effect in January. So they'll receive information about that at the end of the year after the budget is approved, but it will take effect in January.
Got it. Thank you.
Member Erickson?
Thank you. Just wanted to say that, you know, in the bigger picture of budgeting, you know, it isn't a wish list of here's everything we'd like to have, let's just go get it from the taxpayer. It's more of a how do we prioritize things to make sure that we're addressing proper priorities. I do want to say that sitting on the Justice Committee, you know, Don Everhart came to us and said he's 10 people short, you know, and even the state's attorney has had problems recruiting and retaining people. And so has the public defender's office. So there, and I don't know what other department heads have, but, you know, there is a real problem out there. And I do think we have to try to address it in this budget, and I'm not opposed to addressing it. But I just think when everybody says, well, do this for this and do this for this, well, I mean, ultimately you got to decide, do your employees have some priority too? And at some point, if you don't pay them enough, you're not going to have any. And, Don Everhart is starting to experience that now that we even, I think it was last month, we moved him up, didn't we, on his thing, so he could be moved up. Yeah, we did it in justice, we did it in finance. So there is a real issue out there about retaining employees, and there are real shortages, so.
And I think we've talked about this multiple times because this committee continues to get requests to change a employee from one grade to the next in order to make them more competitive within that role. And my question would be probably to Ms. Taylor, and that is, we did not see any of those changes we did not see any employees go down in salary because of changes that we have made at this committee. Is that correct?
Are you speaking with the salary study or prior
The
to the
end
salary study?
result of the salary study.
So the end result of the salary study, there were a few positions that were at market or a little bit above market, but I can 100% assure you that we did not decrease anyone's salary.
Any other questions before we move on? Because as Mr. Williamson said, this is not an action item. This is informational. Any other questions? No? I just want to thank you and your team, as well as the team from the county administrator's office that worked on this. It is long needed, and we appreciate the efforts and the attention that this has made for this budget year, because we've needed to focus on our employees, just as Member Erickson has identified. We've talked about this, he's talked about it multiple times, that we have had other priorities, and this year I think it is evident that we have placed employees in or we have placed their needs at as a priority for this year. So
I'd like to give a special thanks to Amy Baker and Rachel Neisler in our HR department. They were the two that worked directly with Rob and Peter.
Awesome.
Awesome. To do the majority of this work. So, the county administration team gets a lot of credit, but the unsung heroes of this project are our HR department.
very good, thank you. Wow. Do we need to take a break? Because, and thank you very much. I think we are done. We're going to move on to departmental matters with Kathy Michael, but we have been sitting here since 4:30. And why don't we take a 5-minute bio break if we need to? And how do we,
Just take a recess.
we're going to recess and then start back. I wanted to make sure I did this parliamentary procedure correct. Thank you. this meeting of the Finance Committee. And that means that we're going to go, Ms. Michael, you're going to be up. So 4A, excuse me, 4B, 1A. And that is to request approval of an Illinois State Board of Election Voter Registration Grant 2023 Acceptance Agreement. Those are found on pages 5 through 12. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Lawler and a second by Member Lehman. And Ms. Michael, the floor is yours. You want to explain? I mean, I think we know what this is, but because we did receive, it looks like we're going to get $54,000.
Yes, we've got a lot of nice grants that have helped us out over the last few years, and this is another one we usually get, $54,000, and often, and I don't want to get our hopes up, but it depends on what the other counties use or don't use, and we always get a little bit more because they don't use all of theirs, and we counties can put in and say, hey, have you got another 10,000 you can send our way? And often they will, so it's always good to ask. So we'll stick with the 54,000 for now, but we're hoping for more. And then of course the other grant we've got was almost 16,000, and so that all
We
helps.
will get to that in just a moment, all
Thank
right?
you.
So any questions related to this particular grant, to the voter registration grant? All right, no questions. Then all in favor of this acceptance of that voters registration state grant, say aye. Opposed? Very good, the motion passes. We're moving on to 4B, 1B, and that's request approval of the Illinois State Board of Elections Polling Place Accessibility Federal Grant 2023. And again, that will be found on pages 13 through 21. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson, a second by Member Lehman. And Ms. Michael, I think you told us we were going to get, that is a grant for 16,000, was it?
15,772, and that'll help greatly, and it'll help also train part of our election judges on ADA things as well, which is nice. And just real quick, going back to that IVRS, just a reminder for everyone in these challenging election times, that'll help pay for the purge. We always usually have those funds anyway, and that's where we mail you all your voter registration cards again at a great cost every 2 years. I'm not saying that every county doesn't do that. They might be lacking the funds, but that's a very important part of, I hate to say it, but getting dead people off the rolls and helping safeguard that process. So we really appreciate these funds.
Very good. Thank you very much, because I know that those just don't come to us. You have to take an effort. So please, provide our appreciation to your team for that. And
Thanks for bringing that up, because not too many people know, because you're all busy with other things, how many hours, days and hours it takes to figure out this grant stuff. And they've done a tremendous job to enable us to qualify for these, so we appreciate it.
so please thank them. All in favor of accepting the federal polling place accessibility federal grant agreement, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. We're not going to deny ourselves any money. The motion passes. Kathy does have her monthly reports, and we are not going to go into deep detail on monthly reports this month because of the budget stuff. So I'm just going to ask you, look at those questions. Please contact her office. She will certainly put you in touch with the individual that can help you understand the report or the question that you may have. All right? Very good. We're going to now move on to 4C, and that is Marshall Thompson. And she has a monthly report. Marshall, welcome. Do you want to share anything with us?
I would just like to say thank you for myself and the staff for conducting the salary compensation study. We're really looking forward to seeing how that all turns out, so thank you. Everything's going really well. Animal control's functioning as it should, and the dedicated staff is what's keeping the wheels moving, so want to give them a shout out for that.
Again, any detailed questions, I think Marshall is certainly willing, as we all know, to answer any of those questions and provide any insight related to animal control. But we'll see you back in just a little bit, I'm sure. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We are then moving on to 4E1, 4D, excuse me. Michelle, why do I keep missing you? I don't know why. 4D, 2A, and I think, can we do A and B together? I think we'll just put them all together for this month. They're informational items, but I think it's important for her to kind of provide us with a little bit of insight for these quarterly financial reports. So thank you so very much for those, by the way.
Sure. And I believe Ms. Morlock emailed you guys updated ones on Monday or Tuesday of this week. Days kind of run together. I did just want to quickly show that we're doing well. If you look at the year-over-year comparison, one thing I wanted to point out is last year at this point, the nursing home had lost over 1.1 million in fund balance. And as of today, they've only lost 110,000, which I know is still a loss of fund balance, but it is a dramatic improvement. So that was one thing I wanted to highlight. Other than that, there's really no concerns over any of the general fund department budgets. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or you guys can reach out. I know we all probably are tired. Yes, we do.
Well, again, we do appreciate, and we know the reason that these were delayed, so everybody, she and her was working very closely to get our audit that had been delayed also due to this ARPA grants. So these were slightly delayed, and
then we had to do our state grant filing, which just got filed last week on the 27th, whatever day that was,
so
Tuesday or Wednesday.
another
Yes.
bump in the road.
Yeah, so basically it's October 4th or 5th, and we're a little over 2 months away from year end, but I just finished last year, so
Well.
yay. That's the reason I never did a check correctly.
So thank you very much for these. Again, I do encourage you to look very closely. Any questions? I think the good thing, we have an auditor here, and she has reviewed everything and has assured us, and these are the final documents that substantiate that the county is in good financial situation. So
Correct.
thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We have 4E. And we don't have anything but reports, but Tim Jorzak is here. And if you'd like to come up, you can maybe share a little bit of information. I will tell you that he had another meeting in Normal, and had a number of people at that meeting to explain the assessment process as well as that equalization. And I want to thank you publicly and your staff members who helped with that, because that is very important information, and we want to see as many of our constituents at those meetings as possible. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Metzger. I'm happy to do them. I always enjoy going out and doing those. We had really good turnout on just about all of them, so I'm pleased with how they went. I'm not gonna take too long. There was just a couple things I wanted to update since I put this report out. I do now have final numbers for Bloomington, City of Bloomington, and Old Town Township. Those we just got our publication date from the pantograph for those. They are a little bit later than I had wanted them to be this year. It's just a circumstance of the size of the file that Bloomington is this year. It's going to take the pantograph about 3 weeks to get that report set up and printed. So their deadline, their publication date is actually going to be the 26th of October. The factors for the city of Bloomington, which is the question that, the biggest question we're getting now, I mean, it's half the parcel count in the county. Their factor this year from our office is 1.0257%. The factor for Old Town Township is 1.0398%. And like I said, their publication date will be the 26th. I have the final public hearing set. It's also happens to be on that date, just by circumstance of the way the calendar is going to work in November with the holidays, towards the end of the month and some other things going on. It's just not possible to find any other date and time to make it work. So we are going to have my final public information session on property taxes here in this room, October 26th, 5:30 p.m. So encourage all your constituents to come. I go over the equalization process, how it works, why we do what we do, and if they do want to file an appeal, sort of the steps that are involved in that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So now all the deadlines for appeals have run, except for obviously those 2 that haven't published, and we've gotten about 330 complaints filed so far this year, with the big townships still hanging out there yet to publish. So you have any other questions? I'll be here in the back.
I believe Member Thompson has a question for you.
Just real quick, the response at the meetings, I see no arrows sticking out of your back, so it must not have been too bad.
No. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Fortunately, I had Rebecca there making me look good, so it worked out. No, they were great. I had a wonderful meeting in the biggest and the most well-attended meeting I had was actually out in Stanford, Allen Township. We had a packed house there. We had the community center there filled with people asking questions. People are just generally curious about how the process works. They want to know why did we get this notice in the mail? What does all this mean? What does it mean for me if I want to appeal? They just have those questions, and at no point in time was it ever hostile, which I thought was I wasn't expecting it to be, but it's always nice to be able to tell people that people just want answers to their questions.
And I do want, just because it's in Bloomington and Bloomington has, they can still come. It doesn't matter that, you could show up if you would like. People in your township or could continue to come. It isn't restricted just to Bloomington.
Correct. I set them up in the locations that I did because I wanted to provide some geographical balance. I kind of did a north, a south, an east, and a west in as best we could to get suitable locations for. And then I wanted to do 2 in the center of the county as well. But there's nothing area specific about them. It was just a consequence of making sure we were adequately representing the whole county.
And I will say Leroy did have, they provided us drinks and some refreshments. So Leroy was quite the host.
Yeah, and I do. I'm going to put that on record too. The Living Well Center and Leroy, those folks really rolled out the red carpet for us to have our meeting out there. It was really nice.
Okay, very good. Thank you so very much. That moves us on now to 4F, 1A, and that is request approval of resolutions authorizing the county board chair to execute deeds of covenants. And Ms. McNeil is going to come forward and provide us a little bit of insight, but I need to put that on the floor, so I need a motion. We have a motion from Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Erickson. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. The reason why there are so many this month is because of the auction. We have the surplus auction during the summer months. It's silent auction. In total, we had 12 real estate, 4 mobile home, 12 real estate conveyances, 12 mobile home assignments, and then 1 mobile home surrender. So that individual that owned that mobile home that we ended up or proposing that we surrender literally waited until the very last possible moment. And we have several parcels right now that are in payment arrangements with the trustee's office, and just emphasizing the fact that, the goal is to allow a homeowner to keep their property. But as you can see, there are several here that turned over. In total, almost 67,000 is going to be distributed out to the taxing districts after everything settles. So.
Are there questions? Again, Member Thompson, you had a question?
So you have, what you have is you've got the first item for action is going to be 12 real estate conveyances. Then you're going to take an item for action that has 4 mobile home assignments and then 1 mobile home surrender. So there's 3 items for action, technically.
Okay, all in favor of the approval of the resolution authorizing the county chair to execute the deeds of covenant, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to 4F. 1B, request approval of a resolution authorizing the county chair to assign mobile home tax sale certificates of purchase. May I have a motion? A motion by by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Lehman. And I think you probably have already explained this, but do you need additional explanation? I think you said the next ones were for the mobile homes, so.
Yeah, these are assignments. These are just like the real estate. Real estate, when we sell, we convey. Mobile home, when we sell, we assign. So these are going into the hands of new owners. So, and then the final one should be a resolution to surrender.
Okay, very good. So let's go to, we'll do our B first, F1B. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Very good. So we're moving on to 4F1C, and that is a resolution authorizing county board chair to surrender the mobile home tax sales certificate of purchase. May I have a motion? We have a motion by Member Erickson and a second by Member Lawler. And any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And now we have 4F1D, and that is to accept and place on file the county treasurer's monthly financial reports that we received earlier today. And may I have a motion to put those put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Lehman and a second by Member Erickson. He is hot tonight. And the floor is yours.
So I'll just move through just a couple highlights on this report. Please contact me if you have any questions or concerns. Interest rates, you've heard the stories. We're, obviously in a very positive side right now where we're getting interest rates at a very, very high level. The retailer occupation tax, again, during the month of September, we had a positive month. Overall, our budget was $12.1 million, and we are at the end of September with $13.2 million. So we've got a surplus, and we'll continue to see that grow over the next 3 months. Then the let's see, I think it was the insurance. During the month of September, there was a large bump there in our claims. So our total year to date is $4.9 million compared to $4.4 million a year ago. So we actually did reach out to our claim team at Blue Cross Blue Shield. just to make sure that this is just normal claim activity. Is there anything here we're getting caught up on that we need to know administratively? But you can also see in column 8 there, stop loss adjustment, 69,000. Our stop loss insurance protected us to the tune of 69,000, 647,000 year to date. So moving on, I'm going to move on to the nursing home report because I just want to cover a couple of things with the nursing home. This is a report through the month of August for the nursing home. The nursing home revenue for the month of August, $848,544. You can look across that and see that this is by far their best month here in 2022. I contacted Mr. Wiley. He said the increase is due to a 37% increase in their Medicaid reimbursement rate and IGT payments. So that's the very first line there where the monthly revenue is $408,000. It was only $233,000 during the month of July. When you look at their overall revenue right now, and this is revenue and transfers, this is $1,146,000 for the month of August. Their expenses were $1,099,000. Mr. Wiley also wanted you to know that during the month of August, the nursing home started absorbing the cost of their agency expenses. Those are no longer being charged against the relief funds. So that's the reason why their August expenses were up so much. But overall, as of August 31st, their year-to-date revenue recorded on the general ledger, $5,767,000 compared to expenses of $5,016,000. Again, transfers are part of that. So, all right. That was very quick.
That was very
Contact
quick,
me
and
if
I
you have
do
any
want to.
questions.
I do want to thank you for reaching out to our nursing home administrator to kind of confirm that because it does look a little different, as well as reaching out to our Blue Cross Blue Shield because that was quite a significant increase. So your due diligence is appreciated.
Thank you. The Medicaid rates, that's something that Mr. Wiley said we're going to see more Medicaid revenue because of adjustments in those rates. So, and of course, some changes he's made in the facility. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, very good.
Oh, let me say that. Okay.
All right. We are now going to move on to we do need to vote on approving this. Thank you, Ms. Morlock. All in favor of accepting and placing on file the monthly report, say aye. Opposed? Very good. Moving on, that motion passes. We are going to 4G1A. I guess that's right, isn't it? That's right. Yeah, 4G1A, don't mix me up. And that is request approval of a resolution establishing the health and insurance coverage rates. So may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Erickson and a second by Vice Chair Thompson. And please proceed.
I do want to draw your attention to a scrivener's error in the first paragraph of my memo. At the last sentence of that paragraph, it states.
And that would be on page 70 in the first paragraph, last sentence.
Yep. The same plan features as last year with minimal cost to our employees, because there is a 3% increase to our employees that you will see on page 71. The overall increase to the county was 6.12% projected, but we are not expending that or
the county's absorbing it. We're not having the employees cover it. Is that where you're going?
That is the word I'm trying to find.
Very good.
Yes, so there would be only a 3% increase to the employee portion.
Okay. And that's reflected in the budget, of course.
That is correct.
All right. So you can see on this that the rates that our employees will be covering and those changes that have will be, you can see it on page 71 and 72. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, all in favor of the resolution establishing these rates for health and life insurance, say aye. Opposed? Very good, the motion passes. 4G1B, and that is request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the County Treasurer Department 4004. That includes C1 General Fund 001 Financial Management Program 004 and C2 Collector Automation Fund 0168 Financial Management Program 004. May I have a motion to put this on the floor? We have a motion by Member Lehman and a second by Member Thompson. All right. And
So on your PowerPoint presentation up on the screen, you will see that the county treasurer oversees many faculties and functions of county government, including the distribution of the over $375 million to nearly 200 taxing bodies that she collects. The rest of the responsibilities are listed there. It's been up for a while, so I won't read it. The revenues for the treasurer's expenses, the overall revenues increased 24%. Revenue from interest on investments increased 567% from 2022 as interest rates continue to increase, and our interest on CDs decreased 33%. Her overall breakdown is expressed in that pie chart. For expenses, the overall budget is 1% less than 2022. When we asked the departments to maintain a maintenance budget, the treasurer's office took this to heart and maintained her budget. We have also added a full-time accounting specialist 1 position to this budget, and so that is reflected here with 81% of the overall budget in salaries, 11% in supplies, and 8% in services.
are there any questions? And I think there is.
We would like to make one adjustment to that budget that I was just reminded
Please
of.
do, and you're on page 75?
75. So in the 800 lines, we would like to make an adjustment to include a new workstation for that new accounting specialist position, and that would require adding an expense to line 832.0001. It is not on your page because there are currently no funds in that line. So it would be line 832.0001 if you write it in, and that would be in the amount of $4,000. We would ask that that be included in the proposed budget.
Okay, there's a question. And we have a question by Member Erickson.
Yeah, last night I asked if Cassie could send the PowerPoint to us. I mean, it just helps me to see the bigger picture through all the minutia, you know, because it's kind of like a Cliff Notes.
Administration would be happy to send
Yeah,
the
if you could send
PowerPoint
that to
to
us, I'd
all
like
of
to see
the
it.
committee
Thanks.
members. Sure.
Yep.
Thank you. I would agree. I did go through this and I did notice a lot of your line items have little brackets around it, meaning that they're decreased in, and so I would agree that I think with Ms. Taylor's comment that you took it to heart and really looked at each line item and worked diligently to do your reduction. Now, if we can, I do have a question, or I just want to confirm that on page 76, I guess, that would be, we're seeing, those are those changes that we're talking about with salaries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is, if we look at 76, and we have one of these in each one of our departments, that identifies the number of employees, FTEs, what that budget was last year for those salaries, and then what the budget is for the next year. So you will see that the county treasurer and that first in many of these that we see, they're elected, so we don't see a change in those elected positions. Those, as you are aware, we have to approve 18 months prior to the election, and those, so we're not seeing a change there. What you will see is a change in the remaining salaries of those positions. And then she does have some overtime, which is unchanged, so. All right, questions? All right, very good. All in favor of G4G1B, say aye. Opposed? All right, the motion passes. We are going to move on to 4G1C, and that's request approval of a fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the Veterans Assistance Communication Fund 0136, Veterans Assistance Department 0065, Veterans Assistance Program 0074. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Lawler and a second by Member Lehman. And I believe we have our Veterans Assistant,
Yes, we have Jerry Vogler
Jerry
with
Vogler. I
us
could not come
tonight.
up with the name. Thank you so very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I present to you tonight the Veterans Assistance budget. As you can read there, the Veterans Assistance Commission does a lot of work with our veterans, including providing assistance to families to obtain, file, and complete forms for claims. They provide assistance to veterans and their families to obtain certified copies of duty records, the DD-214, and others. And then they also provide other benefits, as you see there on your slide. The overall budget for this department increased by 2%.
Are there any questions? I want to thank you for what you do for our veterans in McLean County. And that this budget is certainly lean, and we know that you're doing what you can, and we so much appreciate that. I do want to also make a comment that Mr. Jorzinski, why do I have trouble with your name? Jorzak. Mr. Jorzak has, in his program, has identified that there are some veterans, I'm trying to, not extensions, but exemptions and deductions that he is more than willing to also help with. So if you have veterans that are disabled or they have needs from a tax perspective, a property tax perspective, I know that his department will certainly bring forth any assistance that you need. So thank you. So no questions. Do you want to add anything for us?
Yeah, there's what could be a major riptide going on here because of what the legislature of the state of Illinois passed. Veterans Assistance Commissions are actually chartered by the federal government through a very old act in the early 1900s. And the state of Illinois then also sometime between about 1908 and probably the 50s decided to get into regulating of the Veterans Assistance Commissions. Technically, there can be one Veterans Assistance Commission in each county in the entire country. And they're county specific so that the veterans organizations have delegates that sit on the commission and run the operations. There's a law that was passed, it's supposed to take effect in January. Not sure what they're calling it, but it's an addendum to the existing state Veterans Assistance Commission. It changes not how VACs are funded, but the bottom line on what they're funded. Right now, I believe we're at 0.003 plus per 100 evaluation for taxes. And this law would make it up to 0.02 with a very strong encouragement from the state of Illinois to fund it at 0.02. I did not include that in the budget this year. Originally, when the law was passed, it said this is going to be effective January 1. The biggest expense part of it was going to be the requirement that every Veterans Assistance Commission in the state would have a certified Veterans Service Officer who could actually file the claims with the Veterans Administration in the Chicago Regional Office for service-connected compensation. They've kind of backed off a little bit from that. There are only 55 commissions out of 102 counties. In this particular area, for instance, Ford County is working on getting one. DeWitt County does not have one. However, Livingston, Woodford, McLean, and Logan County have Veterans Assistance Commission offices. Some of those commissions are only operating 2 days a week, okay? Under this law, if they actually put it into effect, it will require them to have a full-time Veterans Service Officer to handle claims, which from our standpoint, if we funded it, what they're recommending us to fund it, we would be about a 400% increase in what we've currently got in there. And part of the discussion has been, if they do this, then how do counties get around the tax maximum that they can tax? And there's a lot of discussion that something is going on that would actually supposedly set aside this increase in the Veterans Assistance Commission tax out of the cap, which to me doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense because it's still going to come from tax dollars. It's just not going to show on your cap. There's a lot of discussion about what should be done. I did not put it in the budget this year because I think going in and jumping in to something this early when they haven't really figured out what they passed is the wrong thing to do. So it could be sometime during the year we'll be back in to talk about something like that. But generally speaking, especially over the last 6 or 7 years, our budget request has pretty much stayed the same. In a lot of cases, actually went down. For instance, the primary budget item is the emergency veterans assistance for short-term emergency type financial matters. It's gone down mainly in the recent past because the number of veterans in the county has gone down from about 12,000 down to about 9,500. Also because of COVID-19 and all the stimulus packages, those people that had financial problems got stimulus package and for whatever reason they didn't think they needed assistance from us. We're now seeing the ramifications of that ideology in that I'm seeing electric bills for $1,500 because they chose not to pay it at the time that they maybe could have paid it with a stipend, and therefore they have to pay it now because the rules have changed and they can't suspend any payments on those things. Same way with rent assistance. So we think this year is going to pick up on the emergency assistance fund. We're still going to be way, way under budget. But there's a lot of things going on that could really be financially a big ramification for the county and the Veterans Assistance Commission. I'm hoping they take a more measured approach to it and use some common sense, but I don't have any guarantee of that. But we're ready to handle it either way.
And this would be directed more at Ms. Taylor, and that would be if this happens that we have to increase they're basically saying our tax rate would have to increase. We can't do that midstream. So how would this take place? And maybe we don't need to talk about it, but I at least need to understand what we would do.
So we do have some fund balance that we could utilize for a 1-year term if we had to increase staff for a veteran service officer. We've looked at those numbers and could absorb that in fund balance. And then we would be looking to raise the levy next year.
Any questions? Any other questions? All right, seeing none. All in favor of the 4G1C, say aye. Opposed? Very good. That motion passes. Thank you again for your time.
And one thing I did want to point out, I
Please
really
do.
appreciate on line, on account 0778-0002, administrative surcharges. I think there's an error there that indicates the department head 2023 and the county has reduced our administrative charges. If you have, great. If
We
you
have.
haven't, you'll fix it.
We have.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving to 4G1D, and that is request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the Historical Museum Fund 0134, Historical Museum Department 0072, and Historical Museum Maintenance Program 002. And may I have a motion for that? And we have a motion by member or Vice Chair Thompson and a second by member Lawler. And I think you're probably going to take this, Ms. Taylor, is that correct?
I sure am. Thank you, Chair Metzger. So the Historical Museum, their revenue comes from our general property tax. It is the only county source of revenue for this program. Of course, the museum utilizes other grants and other funding streams. The budgeted tax levy is $61,766. That is consistent with FY 2022. For expenses, the distribution and payment of those funds to the museum are through our property tax funds levied in the property tax assessment year, collected in FY 2023. There's no change from 22.
Okay. No questions? All in favor of 4G1D, say aye. Opposed? Very good, it passes. Moving on, and I think Ms. Taylor will take this one also.
Actually, Luke
Oh,
Stremlaw
is
is
he?
here.
Oh, very good.
He is our new director for the
Excellent.
Bloomington Election Commission.
All right, we're going to go to 4G1E, and that's request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the General Fund 001, Bloomington Election Commission Department 0048, City Elections Program 0053. May I have a motion for that? We have a motion by member Erickson and a second by member Lehman. And welcome aboard. Thank you. Have a seat.
So Luke, for those who haven't been able to meet Luke yet, Luke is our new director for BEC. He comes to us highly recommended by the board, the BEC board. He came in right in the middle of the budget process, and so I will share this slide, and then if he has anything else he wants to add, I would appreciate if he would. But state statute allows for the formation of election commissions. You can see there where the appropriate statutes were enacted. The Board of Election Commissioners in Bloomington was established in 1914 and just recently celebrated their 100th anniversary. Their overall budget is 6% more than it was in 2022. Their request is a total of $687,203. The commission has increased their request for funds due to expenses from the new location of their offices. So they moved out of the government center, and they are in the building adjacent to us, as you can tell by the huge signs that say "Vote Here."
Okay, are there any questions? All right, very good. Thank you so very much. I know it's been a challenge for you, so I appreciate all you've done to help with all of this. All in favor of 4G1E, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's my-
looking for page, there it is, okay.
No. Do you have page 3?
I was just looking for mine.
So sorry, I know I have it here.
it is-
For G1F, and that is request approval for fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the General Fund 001 County Auditor. So we get to see Michelle again. Department 003 Auditing and Financial Management Program 003. May I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Lehman. All right, very good.
Thank you, Chair Metzger. The auditor was established under Illinois statutes as well to ensure accountability to the people of the county. The overall budget for the auditor's office, 94% is for salaries, 2% for supplies, and 4% for services. Salary and health insurance increased in relationship to changes to the health insurance and as well as our salary study. All other expense lines remain the same as 2022 or decrease slightly.
Any questions on this budget? Again, we appreciate the diligence that you have and the attention that you have. Again, we see a number of decreases on that budget, so thank you for that effort. Any other comments? All right. All in favor of 4G1F, say aye. Opposed? No opposition? Very good. Thank you so very much. You've noticed I've been cutting back slightly, so thank you so much for sticking around. All right, we now will move on to 4G1H. G, excuse me, G. Yes. And that is request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for General Fund 001, Assessment Office, Department 0049, including F1, Property Assess Review Supervised Program 005, and F2, Board of Reviews Program 0055. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Lehman and a second by Member Erickson. And please go right ahead.
Thank you. Our overall budget for the Supervisor of Assessments is an increase of 15%. Salaries comprise 73% of the budget. Supplies are 14% and services are 13%. Books, videos, and publications increased. That is to better assist the township assessors and the Board of Review with valuation of difficult property assessments and appeals. There was an increase to the advertising and legal notices line item that was significant. That's due to the quadrennial assessment year. All parcels will be required to be published. And then schooling and conferences increased. Registration fees continue to increase for that, for those trainings and conferences. And we also have some new staff in the department. And so that line item has increased. For the budget 0049-0055, the Assessment Board of Review, that budget is fairly simple, and there was only a 1% increase to that budget.
Okay, I appreciate the explanations because I did notice, although they weren't large amounts of money, it was a significant change percentage. So thank you for those explanations, and advertising was had seen quite a jump. So appreciate that, Mr. Jorzak. And does anybody have any questions? I know we don't necessarily like to give a lot of money to somebody who is assessing our property, but it is a state law, and we appreciate the efforts that are taking place. So, no questions? Just cut it out, right? All right. Do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to share with us?
No, thank you for all your support and help over these last 8 months as I've gotten my feet underneath me.
Right. All in favor of 4G, 1G, say aye. Opposed? All right, very good. Motion passes. We are now going to go to 4G1H, and that is the County Clerk Department, and that is request approval of financial fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for the County Clerk Department 005, including I-1, General Fund 001, Election Program 006, Records Program 007, and Legal Records Documentation 008, and I-2, Recorder Document Storage Fund 0137, Legal Records Documentation Program 008, and 1I-3, County Clerk Document Storage Fund 0164, Records Program 007, and I-4, GSI Fees Fund 0167, Legal Records Documentation Program 008. And I need a motion for that. Motion by Member Lehman and a second by Vice Chair Thompson. And those are, golly, found on pages 92 through 107.
County Clerk has several budgets for us to review, and I will go through each in turn. So the County Clerk budget overview for all three of those budget lines listed above have an overall total of 70% salaries, 7% supplies, and 23% in services, and the numbers are listed there. For county clerk elections, 0005, 0006, the revenues decreased by 20%, and overall expenses decreased by 35% due to only one municipal election in 2023. The occasional seasonal line in this budget increased due to the recommendations of the salary study and the increases to minimum wage to $15 an hour. So you'll note that in your line items. The County Clerk Records Department, 0005, 0007, the overall revenue remained the same and expenses increased 5%. 9% of that increase was in full-time employee salaries. Or there was a 9% increase for employee salaries in the overall 5% increase, excuse me. In the County Clerk Legal Records, 0005, 0008, the overall revenues increased by 20%. There were expenses increasing by 7%. There was a reduction in the majority of expense lines. The couple of lines that were not reduced were the employee salary lines, which you might expect by now, and then also health insurance. Legal records, the Special Fund 137, the budget decreased by 10%. This program has experienced increased revenues in the last couple of years. It is expected to level out, and they continue to budget for their ongoing digitization project. And that digitization project is budgeted in the non-contractual line. For the other special funds in the county clerk's office, the document storage fund, special fund 0164, that budget supports a half-time FTE deputy county clerk. There was minimal change to that budget. And then for the GIS fees in special fund 167, that budget decreased by 2%. The GIS document fee revenue increased by 11%. And you can see there that expenses would include transfers to the other departments that also have GIS-related services.
All right, does anybody have any questions? I did notice, and that,
Lehman.
oh, I'm sorry, Member Lehman, please.
Thank you. Sorry, just a curiosity on the records on line 410.0025 with marriage licenses. It looks like previously the adopted budget was 30,000 with 29,000 is the actual amount. We had an adopted budget of 52,000 with the actual amount being 26, but we've stayed with the 55, or we've actually increased now to 55. I was just curious, what is prompting that to increase when the number has continually decreased with marriage license?
I don't have the
revenue?
answer to that right now. We must have gone over those figures and felt that it was going to increase because of traffic and people getting over COVID and things
Yeah.
like that.
One would
So,
hope.
Yeah, so
Let's
we
get some
hope,
more
we
love
hope we're
and
right
joy.
on that one.
Okay.
These were reviewed by staff in each of the departments, and I do believe they think there's going to be a bit of a rebound effect after things have opened up a little bit more after the
Awesome.
pandemic.
Well, let's celebrate even more then.
Yes.
Is there a question about admin surcharge?
Yes, and I just had a quick question about admin surcharge. And I think you mentioned what that was. It was that transfer with the information GSI?
So well, the administrative surcharge is related to those administrative services that are provided to every department. And so those would include the auditor's office, treasurer's office, IT department, and administration. And we calculated it differently this year, so you'll see in almost every budget line there will be adjustments to administrative surcharge if they are charged in that way. And it is because we completed it as a percentage of the total. So we took the percentage for each department and then
Percentage of revenue, percentage of employees, percentage of what?
expenses, right?
Yeah, we took the expense budget as, for the department as a percentage of the entire county budget and distributed it that way.
It just totals it was $1,400 or $1,100, and this year it's $2,700, so it went up significantly. I just was, I mean, it's not a lot, but the percentage was higher, so that's what I was
And you'll
concerned.
see that in other departments, and actually
did,
Jerry
and-
Vogler noted that a moment ago as well.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, all in favor of 4G1H, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes, very good. And again, if you look at your line items, you will notice that all of our department heads have significant, if you see a little bracket, that means it has decreased. That line item has decreased. So that would tell me that our department heads have really diligently looked at each line item to determine if there could be a slight change to keep that tax rate a little bit lower for our citizens. So again, thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you all, and thank administration. I hope you get a break one of these days. Thanks a lot.
And I hope your election goes well.
So we are moving on to 4G1I. And that gets us back to animal control, and we have request approval of financial year 2023 recommended budget for General Fund 001 Animal Control 0032, including J1 Animal Controls 0065 and J2 Municipal Warren Program 00666. And I would like a motion for that. And we have Member Lehman is making the motion, and we have a second by Member or Vice Chair Thompson. And
Here we go. The animal control budget overview, 57% of their budget is for salaries, 2% is for fringe benefits, 31% for services, 10% for supplies. They have a variety of ways that they promote and protect public health and animal safety, and some of those ways are listed there on your slide. If we look to the animal control shelter program, the overall revenues increased by 5%. There were decreases, though, in some of the line items. Animal disposal decreased by 33%, municipal contracts by 3%. Overall, the expenses increased by 5%. There were decreases to clothing lines, decrease to non-major equipment, and there were increases to salary lines and also to contract services for medical services, rabies preventions, and then other state mandates. For the warden program, the revenues increased by 1%, including municipal contracts and animal reclamation fees, but expenses overall decreased by 8%.
Are there any questions? Yes, we have a question from member or Vice Chair Thompson.
The fringe benefits, is that related to salaries or is that just, I'm just curious, that was kind of a new one.
The fringe benefits would be the health insurance
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
costs.
Yeah, yeah. I got you.
And
Is it labeled different? Not that it matters, but I was just curious.
I think she just called it something different, fringes versus health and welfare programs. So
Okay.
retirement and all those. Okay, I do have a question. And I had a pretty significant increase in medical and nursing supplies, so I don't know if you have any insight into that.
I would contribute that to, we compared to the numbers this time last year to this year, we've had 127 more dogs and 134 more cats. And so keeping our commitment to finding them all a home, it's taken more time for keeping them, medical supplies, and then we've seen a slight decrease in adoptions, not a lot. Our return to owners, have increased a little bit. Our transfers are steady and the same, but seeing an increase, dog food, cat supplies, cat litter, those things that everyone's seeing across the board. So more animals, more supplies.
we looked at historical trends as well, and just the cost of supplies everywhere is going up.
Certainly not questioning, I was just trying to see the increase, so, and it's
We're having-
primarily numbers and supply.
Right,
So-
we're seeing that towards the end of this year. We'll probably be looking at emergency appropriation request because we're seeing more feed being used, more supplies, things like that. Not a lot,
Remind
but a
us
little
when you
bit.
come.
Yes, I will.
We've already talked
Heads
about
up.
this. All right. All in favor of 4G? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Member Lehman?
Yeah, I know, right? Shut down.
No, I'm not doing that.
No, I think this is something that we talked about last time around as well, but I just wanted to gain clarification. I was noticing on the revenue side, when it comes to the contributions, we're budgeted, or at least for last year, we were budgeted at 185,000, and that one has only come in year to date at 18,000. Is that like a reporting lag, or are we really only at? Yeah, correct. On the contributions line under revenue.
We've submitted that invoice. The trustees wanted to have it less than, they didn't want to have to do one every month. So they've asked us to hold off. So they're really busy and.
The trustees of a trust that we receive money from.
Correct, yes.
And so that, just so clarify that.
Okay.
It should be coming within the next week probably, but we have submitted that bill. All of the 180 has been utilized on medical treatment of the animals, and they've actually agreed to donate a little bit more. So we'll be seeing, right, the final with the final number, when it comes in, we'll do the emergency appropriation request and make you aware of it, so there's full disclosure and transparency.
Okay, cool. Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate the
Yeah.
connection.
That's a very good question.
It
Good
was very
catch. Yes, Member Erickson.
No, I mean, after you've been sitting here for 2.5 hours, you're liable to say anything. But I did just pay Shakira's $15 registration fee.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy it goes to such a great service. I mean, such a great agency. 'Cause I know it makes her happy and it makes me happy as well, so.
I do think I saw an increase in fees that were late fees. Wasn't there a significant increase in,
That wasn't mine, though.
I think, yeah, animal control late fees was increased significantly. So apparently people are late and we get a little bit more income from them. So maybe if you were late, then you could pay a little bit more.
I always pay my government fees on time.
Very good.
Well,
we're-
the staff has done a really remarkable job in working with, those who are having troubles and then getting what we need to for reporting done. And they're the one that deserves all the credit. They're keeping things rolling.
All right. So are we ready to vote? Make sure I don't miss someone. 4G, 1I. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Very good. Motion passes. We're moving on to 4G, 1J, and that is request approval of fiscal year 2023 recommended budget for Tort Judgment Fund 0135, Tort Judgment Department 0077, including K1 Risk Management Insurance Program 0077 and K2 Risk Management Civil Program 0078. And I think, Cassie, you're taking that one,
I
right?
sure will.
Oh, we need a motion. Thank you. We have a motion by Member Lawler and a second by Vice Chair. Well, you're raising your hand, right? Vice Chair Thompson. You get the next one. I'm so sorry, missed you there behind me. Okay, so Cassie, please take this.
Thank you, Chair Metzger. This is our last fund to review tonight. This is our Tort Judgment Fund. The 135 fund, Risk Management Insurance, has 15% increase to expenses, 5% increase to salaries based on 4 full-time employees. We have a 33% increase to general liability premiums and 31% to general liability claims. There's also an increase in the administrative surcharge, as we just spoke about, based on redistribution of expenses between funds based on percentage size of those budgets. The increases that we are projecting here are based from information we received from A.J. Gallagher. And that's all I'll say about that. The next would be,
So those are anticipated.
these are projected claims and projected premiums on expense or on the general liability insurance. For the risk management civil side, that provides for the state's attorney's office civil division staff, which is 2.3 FTEs. We see no significant changes in that budget. There will be increases to salaries.
Are there questions? We do have a question by Vice Chair Thompson.
So the 33%, that seems pretty steep. Is that something going on in the industry or I shouldn't say industry, but?
Yeah, if you remember last year, we sustained a pretty hefty increase, and I think we're going to hit some of that again this year. At least that's what's been predicted in that forecast that we received from Gallagher.
But that's not us specific, that's like.
No, it's not loss-based.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't something that we did or that we're paying for now. It's just market.
But I'm just curious, I mean, like liability cases in general throughout, or high?
No, I know we've had a couple recent closed sessions to talk about liability cases.
Again, I'm not referring to us in general.
No, overall, I'm just saying that we our loss history is not so significant at this point that we would be suffering these sorts of increases just based on loss history,
But again, I mean, like, everybody in general. I
as
mean,
far
it's-
as I know.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of 4G1J, say aye. Opposed? All right, very good. Motion has passed. We have no other items to be presented, is that correct?
That is correct.
And we've already paid bills, so based on that, I believe we are adjourned.
Thank you.
7:05. Oh, we have a question, just a moment.
Actually, it's not a question. I just want to say thank you to staff and
Yes.
everyone who have put in an outstanding, well, first of all, put in a lot of work and put together a really nice presentation. Thank you. And
Yes.
secondly, to Julie for loaning her coat to me. Otherwise, I would have froze to death.
I offered you my coat, you wouldn't take it.
And I also think we need to thank our IT staff who is staying around for us. So thank you so much for all of that. And I also agree, kudos to all of the staff. And Member Lawler?
As this has been quite an experience for a 29-year-old civics teacher who has talked about budgeting, to actually see it play out live at the local level has been very eye-opening, but it's been quite an experience, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that experience. And I know it's not done, but it's been intriguing and very eye-opening. It's been fun.
We're getting closer.
Thank you very much. Have a great